Have you ever complained about a summer that was too cold or rainy? Well, imagine a summer where it snowed in June, where frost killed crops in July, and where people starved because the sun seemed to disappear. This isn't a sci-fi movie plot. It actually happened in 1816, a year that went down in history as the year without a summer. So, what caused this bizarre and devastating climate anomaly? The story begins a year earlier, in April 1815, on the other side of the world, on an island in what is now Indonesia. A volcano named Mount Tambora erupted. And this wasn't just any eruption. It was the most powerful volcanic eruption in recorded human history, a cataclysmic event that was 100 times more powerful than the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. The immediate devastation was immense. The explosion was heard over 1,000 miles away. Tsunamis swept nearby coasts, and pyroclastic flows, superheated clouds of ash, rock, and gas, wiped out entire villages. The island of Sumbawa, where Tambora is located, was plunged into darkness for days. But the local tragedy was just the beginning. The real global impact was yet to come. Mount Tambora blasted an enormous amount of volcanic ash, sulfur dioxide, and other particles high into the stratosphere. We're talking about an estimated 100 cubic kilometers of debris. Once in the stratosphere, these fine particles formed a gigantic aerosol veil that began to spread around the globe, carried by high-altitude winds. This veil acted like a massive sunshade, reflecting a significant amount of sunlight back into space and preventing it from reaching the Earth's surface. The result? A dramatic drop in global temperatures. On average, the planet cooled by about half a degree to 1 degree Celsius. That might not sound like a lot, but it was enough to completely disrupt weather patterns worldwide, especially in the northern hemisphere. Fast forward to the spring and summer of 1816. In North America and Europe, people were expecting the usual warm weather. Instead, they got something out of a chilling nightmare. In New England and eastern Canada, a persistent dry fog was observed, which dimmed the sunlight so much that sunspots were visible to the naked eye. The air had a reddish hue, and the sky never seemed to get truly bright. Then came the cold. In May 1816, a late frost hit, damaging crops that had just been planted. But June was when things got truly surreal. On June 6th, heavy snow fell across New England, with some areas in Vermont reporting nearly a foot of snow. Rivers and lakes froze over as far south as Pennsylvania. Farmers who had replanted their fields after the May frost saw their hopes dashed once again. Throughout July and August, the months we associate with peak summer heat, the cold persisted. Frosts were reported every single month of the summer in parts of the US and Canada. The corn crop was a total failure in many regions, as it couldn't ripen in the cold. Other staple crops like wheat and potatoes were severely damaged. The price of grains skyrocketed. Oats, for example, went from 12 cents a bushel to nearly $1, an 8-fold increase that was devastating for families and for farmers who needed to feed their livestock. The situation was just as dire, if not worse, in Europe. The continent was already struggling to recover from the Napoleonic Wars, and this volcanic winter pushed it over the edge. In Switzerland, the constant rain and cold led to widespread crop failures. Famine set in. People were forced to eat cats, rats, and even weeds and moss to survive. Food riots broke out in Britain, France, and Germany as desperate crowds raided bakeries and granaries. Ireland suffered a major typhus epidemic, exacerbated by the famine. It was a period of immense suffering and social unrest. Even Asia was not spared. In China, the cold weather ruined rice paddies in the north, leading to a massive famine. In India, the disruption to the monsoon season is believed to have contributed to the spread of a new, deadly strain of cholera that would eventually become a global pandemic. The year without a summer was more than just a weird weather event. It had profound and lasting consequences that shaped our world. The widespread crop failures in New England triggered a large wave of migration. Many families, disillusioned with farming in the Northeast, packed up their belongings and headed west to the Ohio Valley and the Midwest, seeking better land and a more stable climate. This westward expansion was a major chapter in American history, and 1816 gave it a significant push. The desperate need for transportation also spurred innovation. With oats so expensive, horses became too costly to feed. This created a problem for personal transport. In Germany, a man named Karl von Drais was trying to find an alternative. His invention, a two-wheeled, human-powered machine called the Laufmaschine, or running machine, was a direct response to the crisis. You might know it by its other name, the velocipede, the direct ancestor of the modern bicycle. The cultural impact was equally fascinating. The gloomy, dark summer of 1816 inspired some of the most enduring works of Gothic literature. Imagine being stuck inside a villa by Lake Geneva in Switzerland, with endless rain and cold outside. That's exactly where a group of young English writers found themselves. Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, his future wife Mary Godwin, and their friend John Polidori. To pass the time, Byron proposed they each write a ghost story. Mary Godwin, who would soon become Mary Shelley, had a waking nightmare that became the seed for her masterpiece, Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. On that same trip, John Polidori wrote The Vampire, a short story that established the archetype of the charismatic and aristocratic vampire, which would later influence Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, two of literature's most iconic monsters were born from the gloom of the year without a summer. Lord Byron himself wrote a poem called Darkness, which vividly captures the apocalyptic mood of the time, beginning with the famous line, "I had a dream," which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished. The art world was also affected. The massive amount of dust and aerosols in the atmosphere created spectacular, intensely colored sunsets. Artists like J.M.W. Turner in England became famous for his dramatic and colorful skies, with fiery reds and yellows. For a long time, people thought he was just being imaginative. But scientists studying ice cores and historical accounts now believe Turner was simply painting what he saw. The beautiful, yet eerie afterglow of a volcanic catastrophe. It took years for the stratosphere to clear and for global temperatures to return to normal. But the memory of 1816, often called 1800 and froze to death, lingered for generations. At the time, no one knew what was causing it. People offered all sorts of explanations, from sunspots to divine punishment. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists definitively linked the year without a summer to the Mount Tambora eruption. This incredible story is a powerful reminder of how interconnected our planet is. A single event on a remote island can have devastating consequences for the entire world, affecting everything from food supply and migration to art and invention. It shows us how vulnerable our global systems are to sudden climate shocks. Today, as we discuss climate change, the story of 1816 serves as a stark historical case study of what can happen when our planet's climate is thrown out of balance. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the incredible events that have shaped our history. Let me know in the comments what other historical mysteries you'd like me to cover. See you in the next video.